Cadet Emily Carter had been at Fort Armitage Military Academy for only 6 months, but already she'd learned how to keep her head down and her mouth shut. It wasn't that she lacked courage, as she'd come from a family of soldiers, but the academy had its own unspoken code, one not written in any handbook. Some cadets were born into legacy families, sons and daughters of generals, admirals, and senators. They carried their names like shields. The others, like Emilia, were ghosts until proven otherwise. That night, the rain fell hard across the base, drumming against the barracks windows and drowning out the muffled sounds of voices in the hallway. Emily was returning from late drills, her fatigues soaked through, her hair plastered to her face. She was exhausted but content. Her marksmanship scores had improved. Her instructors had finally begun to see her potential. Maybe, she thought, things were starting to turn around. As she reached the stairwell leading to her floor, she heard laughter above male voices, familiar ones. She slowed her pace. The air smelled of wet concrete and sweat. "Carter," someone drawled from the top landing. "Out late again?" "What's the matter? Trying to earn extra points with the captain?" She looked up. 3 cadets stood there. Mason Briggs, the son of a General Kyle Danner, whose uncle sat on the academy board, and Eric Lauren, a smirking shadow who followed the other 2 like a dog. Emily didn't answer. She'd learned silence was safer than defiance. She brushed past them, heading up, but as she reached the midpoint of the stairs, a hand shot out. "Hey, we're talking to you." Before she could react, someone shoved her shoulder hard. Her boot slipped on the wet step, and the world tilted. The concrete blurred into flashes of gray and white. Her head hit something, a metal railing maybe, and then there was only the sound of her body tumbling, the sharp crack of her shoulder against the landing, the flash of pain so white-hot it took her breath away. When she finally stopped, she lay sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, the wind knocked out of her. Above, the 3 cadets stood frozen for a second, their silhouettes haloed by the stairwell light. "Oh, hella, did she hit her head?" Danner hissed. "Shut up," Mason snapped. "She'll be fine." She slipped. "All right?" "That's what happened. You hear me?" They didn't wait for an answer. Their boots thudded away into the rain-soaked night. Emily tried to move, but her arms screamed in protest. She felt something warm on her cheek. Blood. Her vision wavered. Before darkness took her, she caught the faint echo of an alarm from the distant training grounds. A one short, sharp burst, like the night itself was holding its breath. She woke to the sterile hum of the base infirmary. The ceiling lights burned her eyes. A nurse was speaking softly somewhere nearby, her voice blending with the steady beep of a monitor. "Easy there," the nurse murmured as Emily stirred. "You're lucky, no major fractures. A concussion, dislocated shoulder, some bruising. You're going to be fine." Emily blinked. Her mind felt foggy. "What, a broken bar? What happened?" "You fell down the barracks stairs. At least that's what the report says." The nurse hesitated, just enough for Emily to notice. "Who filed the report?" Emily asked quietly. "Your squad leader, Cadet Briggs." Emily's stomach turned cold. "Mason, of course." The nurse gave her a look that said she wanted to say more but couldn't. Then she added softly, "You should rest." "But a broken bar? You might want to talk to Major Hernandez when you can. He's been asking questions." By morning, word had spread through the academy. Whispers followed her through the halls. Some cadets offered half-sincere sympathy, others avoided her entirely. Mason and his friends walked around like nothing had happened. They even had the nerve to laugh when they saw her arm in a sling. At lunch, Emily sat alone, her appetite gone. The dining hall buzzed with conversation, but she could feel the tension beneath it. Something was off. A hush fell over the room as the doors opened. 3 high-ranking officers entered: Generals Ramsey, Whitaker, and Hahn. It was rare to see even one of them in the cadet mess hall. All 3 together was unheard of. They didn't say a word. They just walked through, their expressions like carved stone, stopping briefly at the officer's table before exiting through the side door. But as they passed, Emily saw General Hahn's eyes flick toward her, sharp and assessing. Then came the sound of an echoing metallic clunk as the hall doors locked behind them. Outside, sirens blared. The entire base was going into lockdown. Within minutes, every cadet was ordered to their quarters. Windows were sealed, communications restricted. The rumor mill exploded: an escaped prisoner, a foreign spy, A security breach. No one knew the truth, but Emily noticed something others didn't. The lockdown began only hours after her fall. By late afternoon, Major Hernandez appeared at her door. "Cadet Carter," he said, his tone clipped but not unkind. "You're to come with me." He led her across the courtyard, where armed MPs stood guard at every corner. They passed through 3 checkpoints before entering the operations building, a place cadets rarely saw from the inside. In a small conference room, 3 generals waited. General Ramsey, tall and gray-eyed, motioned for her to sit. "At ease, Cadet. We need to ask you a few questions about last night." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Ramsey studied her for a long moment. "You fell down the stairs. That's what your report says. Is that accurate?" Emily's throat tightened. The truth burned inside her, but she also knew how power worked at this academy. Mason Briggs wasn't just another cadet, he was the general's son. Ramsey's son. She met his gaze. "Yes, sir, I slipped." The room was silent. Then General Whitaker leaned forward. "And you expect us to believe that?" Emily's heart stuttered. "Sir?" Whitaker tapped a folder on the table. "We reviewed the security footage. The cameras were tampered with exactly 7 minutes before your fall. Someone erased part of the feed. Someone with access." Her breath caught. Ramsey's expression didn't change, but the air in the room shifted cold and heavy. General Hahn slid a photograph across the table. "Do you recognize these 3? It was Thame Mason, Danner, and Lornia caught in a still frame from earlier that night, standing at the stairwell entrance." "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "Good," Hahn said, "because we have a serious problem." Ramsey finally spoke, his voice low. "Those 3 cadets are now missing." The words hung in the air like a live wire. Emily blinked. "Missing, sir?" "Vanished," Whitaker said. "Their bunks were untouched this morning. Uniforms gone. Personal devices destroyed. No sign of forced entry. It's as if they walked off Bazzi, except that's impossible under lockdown." Emily tried to steady her breathing. The 3 of them gone. It didn't make sense. Ramsey folded his hands. "We've restricted all movement on the base. No one leaves until we find out what happened. You were the last one to see them, Cadet Carter. So we need to know everything. Every detail." She told them what she could of the encounter in the stairwell, their words, the shove. When she finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Hahn said softly, "Thank you, Cadet. You've been through enough. We'll handle the rest." But Emily could see it in their face as a whatever had happened. It was bigger than an assault. That night, the base felt different. The floodlights burned brighter. Patrols doubled. Somewhere near the training yard, a helicopter circled endlessly. Emily couldn't sleep. Her head throbbed. Her shoulder ached. But worse was the unease gnawing at her. She kept replaying the moment she fell, with the look on Mason's face, the sharpness in his eyes. There was something else there, something she hadn't noticed before. At 02:00 hours, a soft knock came at her door. It was Major Hernandez again, but this time he looked pale, unsettled. "Get dressed, Cadet," he said. "You're coming with me." Now, he led her to the command center. The 3 generals were there again, along with a team of intelligence officers staring at a series of screens. One of the feeds showed the academy perimeter. And there, near the south fence, were 3 figures moving slowly, almost drunkenly, through the mist. Emily's stomach twisted. It was them. Mason, Danner, and Lauren. But something was wrong. Their movements were jerky, disoriented. Their eyes caught in the floodlight glare looked glassy, vacant. "Sir," one of the techs said, voice trembling, "they've been missing for nearly 12 hours. We checked every camera. They weren't anywhere." Then a broken bar appeared. Ramsey's jaw clenched. "Have med teams ready. Don't let them leave that field." MPs approached the figures cautiously. The camera zoomed in and everyone in the room froze. Mason's uniform was torn, stained with something dark. His lips moved soundlessly. Danner staggered, collapsed, and began crawling on his hands. Lauren's face was a mask of blood and dirt. Suddenly, all 3 turned toward the nearest soldier. Their eyes reflected the floodlights, an unnaturally bright, almost metallic. Then the feed went black. Screams echoed faintly through the compound. Alarms blared again. Emily backed away from the screens, her pulse hammering. What was that? No one answered immediately. Then General Hahn said, "Cadet Carter, Did those men say anything before they pushed you? What? Anything strange? Anything that didn't sound like them? Emily tried to recall. Mason's voice had been mocking, cruel, but then, just before she fell, she remembered a flicker of something else. A whisper she dismissed as her mind playing tricks. "They's the broken bar, something like a 'it's coming for you too,'" she whispered. "I thought it was just a..." "Damn it," Whitaker muttered. "We should have contained this sooner." Hernandez turned to the generals. "What the hell is going on?" Ramsey's expression was grim. 3 days ago, during a classified joint exercise, those cadets were part of a recon unit testing a new surveillance system in the restricted zone beyond the southern ridge. The system malfunctioned. Everyone thought it was a tech glitch. But after that mission, a few of them started a broken bar changing. "Changing how?" Hernandez asked. Ramsey's voice dropped. "Memory lapses, blackouts, violent behavior. We quarantined 2 of them. Both went into cardiac arrest within 24 hours. The others were cleared and returned to training." He looked at Emily. "Your attackers were part of the group." The room went silent. "So whatever happened out there," Han said, "followed them back." By dawn, the lockdown had turned into a full containment order. No one in or out. The base was sealed tighter than a vault. Emily sat in the infirmary again, her arm throbbing, the sound of distant shouting carrying through the walls. Outside, she could see teams in hazmat suits combing the training fields. Then she saw them bringing something in a sealed stretcher, covered completely. The air around it shimmered slightly in the morning fog, like heat haze. Later, Major Hernandez appeared again, his face drawn. "Cadet," he said quietly, "they've ordered an evacuation for most of the academy, but you're staying. The generals want to debrief you again." She frowned. "Why me?" "Because Mason Briggs kept saying your name before they sedated him, over and over." Emily's heart sank. "He's alive?" "For now." Hours passed. The base felt like it was holding its breath again. When she was finally called back into the command center, only one general remained, Ramsey. He stood by the window, staring out at the hazy morning. "You've been through more than anyone should, Cadet," he said quietly. "But I need to ask one more question." "Yes, sir." He turned toward her, his face lined with exhaustion. "When Mason pushed you a broken bar, did he touch you anywhere besides your shoulder?" "Skin contact." She hesitated. "Yes, sir." "He grabbed my wrist." Ramsey nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting it. "Then, Cadet Carter, I'm afraid you're not just a witness anymore." The door locked behind her with a soft click, and outside, the sirens began again, a long, rising wails that signaled a new phase of lockdown. Inside that sealed room, Emily stared at her trembling hand where Mason had grabbed her, and for the first time she noticed the faint, dark pattern blooming beneath her skin, like veins filled with smoke, pulsing softly in time with her heartbeat. Somewhere down the hall, the sound of boots thundered. 3 generals weren't locking down the base anymore. They were locking her in.